Hello and welcome to the Bethesda Bubble Podcast. My name is Alan, and today this is the 6th episode so far. We are discussing the topic of moral versus absolute justice. Now, you may be wondering, well, what is this subject? Basically, absolute justice is strictly following the law of the land to, its core principles, whereas moral justice is essentially adjusting the law in some sort of way to the specific degree necessary. And this is a very subjective argument. So, let's get started. Who wants to take the floor first?
Okay, so I believe that actually, I guess what's more important is, I don't know, it depends. Because, you can't just say.
Well, in my opinion, in pretty much every instance, I would lean more towards absolute justice because I think humans intrinsically need to follow a higher order. And in order for that order to really work, I think the law of the land needs to be strictly followed in order to establish precedent. Otherwise, there would be a lot less order, and really the law would be a lot more volatile, and everyone's opinion on what is morally righteous is diverging, essentially. So what makes one opinion more valid than the other? I mean, there are things that are pretty much universally agreed upon as adverse, such as egregious acts like murder, etc., right? But then there's kind of the nitty-gritty of circumstance that comes into play, and I feel like that's just so subjective that it's really impossible to go on a case-by-case basis. So that's why I just think that absolute justice is better, because if it's established that they cannot do this thing and it is outlawed in society, I think that it'll really, render it, or I guess be struck as something bad in their mind in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you, because if you just change the rules around every single thing that seems moral, then the moral truth can be manipulated and say well, if this is allowed, then this next thing can be allowed, and this next thing, and this next thing. And I just think deviating from what is said to be good or right, subjectively, or not subjectively, but objectively by the government, should be strictly followed. Because if you deviate from that, then there's no telling how far you can go.
You're saying it's a slippery slope, basically.
Yeah, it's for instance, if you appoint more judges into the Supreme Court, if that's allowed, then more and more things could happen. You know what I'm saying?
Let me see, the thing about absolute justice is that, I'm sure we can all agree that humans are generally not perfect from at least from most people's definitions, and therefore the laws that we create are also going to be imperfect. They're going to have flaws sometimes. We've seen that in history. Laws aren't always perfect. So I think everything is case by case, because I don't think any two instances of drug dealing and any two instances of murder are exactly the same. So you have to like Tusi was saying, you have to look at. I lost my train of thought, but you're talking about So we can all agree that murder in general is wrong, but it's the circumstances present in that case that make us really question. And I feel like you have to give a lot of attention to that. That's important, because you don't want to do something that you might regret in the future. I don't know. In the case of the kid, anyway. I'm personally against most things related to drugs. Marijuana is we obviously know marijuana is not as extreme as a lot of other drugs, and it's more of a gateway that leads in other drugs. I don't think 10 years. I don't know if that's a realistic sentence for a minor. I don't think it is, honestly. But if that were the case, I feel like it's a kid. They should definitely get punished, and the punishment should be strict, but it shouldn't be that severe.
This is where we have differences in laws, though. There's possession of drugs, and there's possession with intent to distribute. There's murder, and there's manslaughter. That's why we have difference, and because manslaughter is still technically murder. It's just not. Well, you're killing someone in both cases. It's not intentional and what though.
Supposedly, yes.
And like keep in mind, like past laws, for example, like one common one was I'm forgetting the name. It's well known. It's on the tip of my tongue. It was used in the South at the time. Jim Crow laws, yeah. Like with the Jim Crow laws, I mean, obviously, in that case, you can't really use the excuse of absolute justice being like, well, it's to the law. Like, we all know, especially during now, I mean, at that time, they thought it was right, but, like, we know that now, that was definitely not okay, and that's when your moral compass starts to point out, realizing, hey, this isn't okay. Like, you can't view that on an objective basis. You would probably have to use your morals and be like, well, I believe that blah, 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 and, so forth.
Exactly.
But that's why laws can be changed. Like, that's why laws have changed, is because over time views have changed. It's not whether it, like...
But is it because of moral reasoning, or is it just because of an objective reasoning?
Yeah, it wouldn't happen if we didn't have our own individual morality.
Yeah, exactly. If there were no...
I mean, yeah.
So I think they go hand in hand. You need a balance. Like, it's good to have like a general framework of like how things should be. It's not gonna be perfect, obviously, and then you use your own intellect and your own ability to think for yourself to try to change that to the. I mean, I guess what you consider better sort of differs from person to person, but I guess you combine your own beliefs with the establishment, and I guess you can get something that's sort of beneficial.
And it's not only that, like, you can also look at executive orders, for example, like, remember I forget the specific number, but the one that caused, back in World War II, caused...
9066?
Yes, where, people were forced into internment camps, and, like, objectively, that was like, yeah, you see any Japanese Americans, put them in cages. But in a moral standpoint, that's completely wrong. And, like, again, it ties to a lot of things. For example, immigration. Like, yes, illegal immigrants deserve said punishment. But do you believe the said punishment should be having families separated for weeks on end? Like, there's just a lot.
But, like, what are we exactly... Is it saying we should follow or we should judge a case morally versus objectively? Or is it, like... should it be like, should we change the laws for morality's sake or on objective, like?
Well, that's kind of the essence of this question, really.
But what is the question?
The question is, should it be, I guess, changed to circumstance? So I gave you guys an example earlier of this. I think it was just like a story, basically, of this woman who had endured a lot of abuse because at the time domestic abuse was very, prevalent, and women were basically just treated like objects at the time, and she murdered her own husband, and these other women found out, but they didn't report them to the authorities, or they didn't report her to the authorities because they empathized with her. And in that example, it essentially brings up the question of whether, the law should be very strictly followed, as in, like, the woman who murdered her husband, should she get the precedented, time in jail for murder, or should it be kind of based on her circumstances? I mean, she was abused, she was, not treated well at all, there's a reason she murdered her husband, and that is, when that's taken into account, how much will society grow? And I mean, okay, well, sorry.
No. If it was self-defense, like, that's one thing, but, like, if murder is still murder,
But then also one, like, if I was playing devil's advocate here, I could also be like, why didn't the woman report about the abuse? Why did she had to go with murder? Couldn't she have just reported it to the authorities? Like, again...
Authorities at the time were this was, like, a while ago. This is, like, where if you were a woman and reported domestic abuse, seriously. So, essentially, it really brings into account the circumstances of it all. And I just find that really interesting, and that's one of the reasons I'm more for absolute justice, because, it's really a slippery slope, but, like, who isn't to say that if we establish moral justice, society won't go to crap and basically fall into this like adverse loop, adverse rabbit hole where the decisions eventually become worse and worse.
Isn't that technically happening with like the judicial system right now? Like, think about it. Like, cause isn't it cases are decided based on a jury, and if they think it's like correct or not, or am I getting that wrong? Because I feel like right now the system.
We live in a mixed society of the two. We live in a society where the Constitution is the basis of all justice decisions, but there are things like juries and like lawyers that can argue for more lenient sentences or more harsh sentences, etc.
But is the jury sentences based on moral or is it based on objective? Like,
it's based on both. That's like what I just said.
I think judicial systems, like right now, is like all right because again, for something to be like correct, it has to be like a mix of both.
Right.
It can't be like he broke the law, you have to give him death sentence.
Yeah,
that's
like
what it says in the paper. It's like, well, he did this, maybe it was like in self-defense, etc.
Yeah, like in Better Call Saul, like this guy basically murders someone, but he pretends to have a family, and once he has a family, the judge lowers the sentence by a lot, and it's like that is like something
That's a real world example.
something that could happen because like
it hasn't. There's no way that would happen in. Like,
There is an actual statistic that shows that in court cases, whenever no, this is a thing. There's like in court cases they have this thing where it's like what they do is with the lawyers for the person that's supposedly accused. What they do is they put glasses on the person because it's a weird thing, but basically, I don't know what's the... it's basically the stereotype of this guy wears glasses, man, what a nerd he is. He would never do the crime, and it actually works. Like,
well, I can answer that thing for you. I'm not a psychology expert, but I happen to I guess I have a pretty decent amount of general knowledge in it. So the thing about glasses, like when you see someone with glasses, at least I've noticed it from experience and from what how I've talked to people. But if you see someone with glasses, you sort of respect them more in a lot of cases. I don't know about nerd, maybe nerd, maybe. If
they kind of judge them like they would never do that. That's why you see that's why you see most people in court, for example, I think Nicholas Cruz, for example, I think in his case he wore glasses, I believe. I could be wrong.
He always wore glasses.
Yeah.
I don't know all the specifics.
But they always wear glasses in the cases because they know it's like a weird cheat system. One can argue.
Yeah, so I think the thing behind that is that when you subconsciously look at that, you sort of feel a bit bad for them because glasses aren't a bad thing. There are a lot of there's a lot of fashion reasons behind it too. But you often sympathize with people with glasses. You feel like they're not necessarily weaker, but I mean there's always that question would you hit a man with glasses? You feel bad for them, and you look at them like they're smarter or wiser a little bit. I guess I notice I do that too. When I see someone, I often like them better if they wear glasses. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is sometimes. And I was actually gonna say before I answer the question about the woman murdering her husband, I want to talk about my interpretation of justice a little bit. So as you all here know, a couple of years ago, I think starting in 7th grade, I remember I watched Death Note. And I became super obsessed with justice. It was like my favorite word. I really liked the idea of getting what you deserve, like eye for an eye, stuff like that. But then in the past few months, I've come to realize the reality, and there really is no such thing as true justice, because justice is usually a construct of the current base of power or the majority, which can change at any point. So you have all these people, whoever it is, whether it's just ordinary people, activists, politicians, whoever, standing up for justice, but little do they realize each one of their definitions is different. So I'm just which justice? Yours, mine, everybody else's. So that's the thing. I think, so since we all have different interpretations of justice, I think if we're gonna try and define justice at all, I think it should be about proportional. And it's not always about what's right, it's what's fair. I remember in my mosque, one of my teachers, when he actually got me to watch Death Note, and he said justice isn't always like doing the right thing. Like if someone punches you, I mean, I guess the nice thing to do would be to forgive them, but that's not justice. Justice would generally be to punch them back because that's an equal and proportional punishment. You know?
That is something. I don't know why, but when you were talking about Death Note, that reminded me of this, like, I don't know why we're in the subject of anime right now, but, in the one anime I watched, Dragon Ball Super, there was this, one villain named Zamasu, and he was a very, I mean, he had more of a religious tendency towards justice, but then again, he was a god, technically, and, like, basically, what he believed, like, he has this one important quote. It was like, "Evil must perish, justice is necessary for good to flourish," that type of thing. And I don't know why, it kind of just makes me think, like, I don't know, like, you would have to know the show and how it happened, because
Yeah.
basically he viewed things as, like, he believed humanity was a failure. He thought that, like, I don't know, they lived through so much and they keep repeating the same, like, stuff over and over. Yeah, like war, crimes, everything. And he believed, like, there was no, I guess, he wanted, like, he just didn't believe in the good of humanity. He thought they were basically just, like, basically just worthless garbage because of what they do. And that kind of, I don't know, that just made me think about that for a solid minute.
There's a lot of characters like that. The thing about that logic is that you can sort of understand where it comes from. It comes from like a cynical standpoint. Like there's this quote, I can't remember who said it at the moment, but it is inside every cynic is a disappointed idealist. So I guess like if humanity and people just keep making the same mistakes, doing the same dumb stuff over and over again, you start to lose faith in them, and then you become pretty pessimistic, and I guess closed-minded in a way. Because I think that people who think like there's only good and evil and right and wrong, I think that's a very closed-minded, simple way of looking at it. I feel like oversimplifying it doesn't really help. We should try to be more open-minded and try to understand other perspectives.
Yeah, but inherently, when you understand other perspectives, does that mean we have to alter the law of the land? And do we have to, because what if one person does a crime that's identical to another person, but the jury's like, yeah, but they were, it's like, come on, man, like, and that's kind of present in a sense today, but not like to the moral justice degree that I think I'm talking about here. And essentially, I guess, why wouldn't because like to a human sentimental side, like moral justice makes so much sense, right? Oh my god, yeah, we just do what's right? But when you take into account other perspectives, it's such a complex thing, and it's like, I don't know. And anyone else want to add on that? James, you want to?
Yeah, but like, that's the reason laws can change, is because opinions can change, but you have to have some objective, I don't know what to say, like kind of like foundation.
A framework or a foundation to work.
Yeah. You need to have some framework. Like, that's why we have that's why you have amendments, because amendments, you can change amendments, but that's why we have the Constitution. So we have amendments which change over time. For example, like we repealed not being able to drink, and that's why we can add on to it, because times change, circumstances change. Same thing with morality. Like people 100 years, 200 years ago were like, man, I hate people with different skin and they can't have any rights. But now, people keep those opinions to themselves, because if they, say it out loud, they just get screwed up the ass,
Well, and I feel like it's less prevalent because we've definitely advanced in terms of like that area. But
that's what I was gonna say. I wasn't gonna think. Most people have those opinions but are closeted about it. No. I think that there are some people that are closeted about it, but I would say that definitely the majority of people have understood that.
No, well, not necessarily. I don't know. I think a lot of racist people keep it to themselves because in society it is not it's not a good look at all to be racist.
Yeah.
Yeah, in their community, it's accepted.
But like in real society,
It's just-
if you want a job, you cannot be racist. Basically, okay, that's what I'm saying. 100 years ago, sure, maybe yeah, you could be an open racist, but now, that's what I'm saying. That's how moral justice can change because, as a society progresses, the moral attitude and the more compasses of a society, alters.
Exactly. Then
What is to say that a society's moral compass won't go to crap? Like, what is to say that? How do you know that won't happen? It's possible because once you're at such a high, you can really only go down unless every single measure is ticked off, and then we just keep living like this. Like,
yeah. So also adding on to that, that's why it's so easy to like look back at the past and like judge it and be like, oh, these were bad people. They all did bad things. I mean, yeah, sure, it's bad by our standards today, and maybe even back then. But I guess back then, maybe like just like we were talking about last time, like maybe they're just a product of their times. And also, I was arguing with a vegan today. I think I thrashed them honestly, but sometimes it scares me to think like, yo, what if like 50, 100 years in the future, what if veganism is the only thing that's like acceptable, and if you eat meat, you're like a monster, And
What if we're all furries and
yeah.
No. I will make sure that idea does not happen. I will be the reason why that idea gets exterminated.
Dude, it's gonna be like the Doomslayer.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So I was gonna connect this back to what Alex was saying in the religion podcast. Yo, Ben, you saying something?
What? No, this is supposed to be chicken noodle soup, and this is just not chicken. It's like pork.
Please mute yourself before commenting. Like I was saying, I want to get back to what Alex was saying during the podcast when we were discussing religion. Like he said we have books like the Bible and the Quran to sort of like set a foundation and a framework, and then you use your own intellect and your own subjective morals to like build off of that and interpret it the way that you think is correct. And I sort of agree with that.
Yeah, I can agree with that too. But then it also, I don't know, like this kind of brings up the question, do you think religion ties to morality, or does one
Yeah,
find...
so I was actually gonna
that's a completely different podcast. Well, yeah, go ahead.
It's not completely, it's definitely very relevant, but I was gonna say, like in Lang, when we were reading, I think, Letter from a Birmingham Jail, one of the questions I was asking when we talked about it in class was, do you think MLK derives morality off of religion? Because we obviously know he was like very, very Christian, very religious. He talks about a lot of things in a religious context. So do you think, like, I feel like a lot of people derive their morality only from religion, but then do you think that, I feel like I didn't agree with some of what he was saying.
I agree that with Alex's point and what you just said, how religion gives a moral backbone to people, but
yeah.
I think there's other societal ways that religion can help a person in their, ventures. I mean, we already kind of had a religious podcast that should already be out by the time this comes out. I don't know. This is like recorded in like November or October, but like I'm pretty sure that could be out soon. But
yeah.
Have you edited it faster?
I already uploaded it.
Okay.
So I think that religion, although in my opinion is scientifically baseless, I think it's a decent thing, and I think good people are religious, and I think it's not necessarily the most adverse thing.
Religion can have its pros and cons. It just depends on the.
Yeah.
It depends on the practice. Bad practice makes bad habit.
After this, because remember we were going to just continue our discussion from earlier. I wish we had Alex as well.
Right.
But in order, so let's stray back to the center here. Do you guys think? Let's go around. Do you guys overall agree with moral or absolute justice more? And we'll start with Emil.
Oh boy, I guess I'm the lucky one. Oh man, that's hard. Cause I guess technically absolute, because at least it has the common laws that everyone would follow, regardless of societal standards. But I don't know, because bad morals can lead to bad habits. So I don't know. it's either you have morality and you take the good and the bad, or you take absolute and you have.
Wait, Emil. So I'm confused. What do you mean by good and bad morality?
Well, think about it. Some people can view things to the farthest extent. Like we were just
Good
talking.
bad morality is a paradox.
Anyways, basically what I'm trying to say is, with some, like, I don't know, with some morals of, murder is bad, but someone can, try and make a little loophole, which is like, make it in a way where it's like, murder is bad, but I believe it kind of goes, I was going to say God, but again, that doesn't really tie with morals, but like, for example, let's say a religious man says God, God doesn't forgive a lot of things, but I believe God can forgive people who do murder, say, for example. And the next thing you know, there's some, like, crazed serial killer. I don't know. It's not the brightest example. That I just literally thought of the top of my head. But kind of in a sense where, because obviously morals are subjective. I mean, yes, there's a common viewpoint, but there's going to be, at least with some, there's going to be a bad moral compass in some people. So, like, it's either you take both the good and the bad, but you still have, I guess, your moral standpoints, but you also include that with everyone else in society, or you just have the common law where everyone just follows it.
No, I see where you're coming from. So I'll go next, actually. So I mean, like almost all things in life, I think you need a balance. But to me personally, like I like the idea of just like being able to think individually, and I mean, it's definitely good. It's mature to make peace with the establishment, but in some cases, like you should do what you think is right, and even if that, I don't know, even if that's like different from what everyone else thinks, like I guess stand up for what you believe in, because that's how people accomplish things in the past, by doing what they thought was right despite everyone else's opinions.
All right, James, would you like to go next?
I think it should be a mix. So, like, I think the system right now is pretty good. I think in the end, it should be.
What would you lean towards?
You either follow the like objective, what was it, like the objective law,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't think it should be followed, then you change it. But in no way, shape, or form should morals, like, I don't know. It's like basically.
You're absolute.
What? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess.
But like, it's like absolute, and if you don't think that's a good thing, then you change it. You change what absolute means in that case, since that's possible.
Yeah.
All right.
Bennett, what do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bennett, we haven't heard you. What do you think?
Absolute, probably, because I feel like moral justice could, just lead down to, like, I don't know. You're basically writing your own laws at that point. Like if you get to decide what happens based on like every single circumstance, and there's like an argument to be made in like every single case for like why you can get like a lesser sentence.
That's true. It becomes a huge.
So I'm not a huge fan of absolute justice, but I think like complete moral justice is just.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Kind of like what James was touching upon earlier with the whole like, if one circumstance is given this, then that means this circumstance should be given that, and then it just becomes a huge loophole with things. Kind of like with the Supreme Court, except 100 times worse with all like the separate cases.
Yeah, and I think in an ideal world, we'd all like to see a mix, which is kind of how the U.S. is now. I mean, it really depends on country to country how their legal system is. But, so I guess one last kind of thing we could do for this podcast is determine whether absolute or moral justice. I guess I'll give you guys some scenarios, and what would you think would be the best? Would you still lean towards absolute or moral justice?
All right.
Here's the first scenario.
Okay.
Let's say a 15-year-old kid, in order to provide for his family who's in poverty, has to rob a store, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would you lean towards? Would you still be absolute, or would you be moral? Because this is actually what challenges.
Can I go first? So,
yeah, definitely.
So like, I definitely think I definitely think so we can all agree that like we already established, we know that murder, stealing, all that stuff is generally wrong. Like almost all people would agree on that. But then obviously when it becomes circumstantial, that's when it gets debatable. That's when it sort of becomes like does the end justify the means? And I think in general, stealing to provide for your family, I think that's definitely a valid reason. But then I think the line is like let's say I was stealing so that my wife and kids could eat. I think the line would be I wouldn't do it if I would be taking away somebody else's food. But if I'm doing it, it's not directly harming somebody. Like if I rob a store, I mean that's bad. Like you should definitely pay if you can, but hopefully that store like if it's like maybe a large chain or something, they're losing a little bit of money. It doesn't actually affect the employees and their family.
Wait. So you're literally like you're making a Robin Hood argument, basically.
Yeah.
No, well, I'm not saying.
Well, you're saying it's basically like if you steal 0.01% of a rich person's wealth and give it to people who have no money, then that's justified.
I'm not saying,
Basically-
bro. I'm saying if my family is like starving and like I have to do it. Okay, wait. Listen. Let's say there's like a small shop, maybe owned by one guy who he's like a small business owner, and if I steal from him, then his family won't get to eat that night. That's I'm not gonna do that then.
But how would you know that?
Because it's a small business, you would assume.
Like for example, if it's like a major chain, like a major company that everyone knows, then like I wouldn't feel as bad shoplifting as a last resort.
But how would you like?
Or if it's like some
yeah,
who's like parking in the handicap slot, but they don't have a car, you like see them.
Oh yeah.
No, the circumstances. You don't know the circumstances. What if that dude has like his pregnant wife and you have to park there to like because there's no other parking spots and I have to bring them in the hospital. You don't know. That's the
I'm
point.
saying if you see him get out of the car, James.
Okay, well, like it's basically you don't know the circumstances people are in when you do a crime, so you basically can't say
You don't always know.
can't do moral because in that case people would just say, well, you shoplifted from my store and I'm poor too, so wouldn't that blah 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 blah. That's why you need objective.
No, I do agree with you. I'm just saying that you can't say that you never know the circumstances of the other person.
Well, I mean, not always.
Burglaries that are well planned, you usually know a lot about the family. Right?
Well, how would you know that?
I mean, if I had to like split myself up to two, the moral side believes that yes, in that case, it's alright. But then in the objective,
Justified.
justified. But in the absolute justice, it's like we have so many systems in which if you were poor and you were homeless, you could have gotten food stamps or something. Like, you could have done that. Why didn't you do that instead of like robbing? So like it's weird.
Because if there's a problem, like if you have a problem and you blame it on this, if you blame it on the law and say, well, the law can't apply to me because I'm in this situation that the law put me in, then that's not the problem with the law. It's the problem with the system.
Then it's more beneficial to be put in like bad situations.
What?
Explain.
You basically do whatever you want and say like, oh yeah, the law doesn't apply to me because I have no money, and that's.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's how it's so.
That's why moral.
You would have
bad precedent for other people, because if another person is also on the brink of poverty, why doesn't every person just start stealing from grocery stores
and say, hey, I'm poor, I'm about to die, I can do it, right?
I feel like such a conservative right now, being like making that argument, but like I honestly think
This is also
society to function.
it's just social hierarchy.
This
isn't usual moral justice. Like this isn't moderate moral justice. This is like the very very extreme end.
Yeah.
Like not get punished at all. Like whereas like regular moral justice that we were talking about earlier is like, oh, you get punished less than someone else. Like you get like
you need to read this. There's this. I had to research about him. He was known in the. I learned this in honor. I had to study about him in Honors Modern World. I forget his name, but he wrote a book or essay called On Crimes and Punishment, but it was like in Italian. But basically, he kind of said the same thing. Like he had a huge criminal justice reform. He believed that the crime should be punishable where the person. It teaches an example not to do it, but at the same time, the punishment shouldn't be like kind of like what we were saying, like just because you steal, I don't know, a box of cinnamon toast crunch, gotta love that. You don't deserve to get, you don't get to deserve, you don't you shouldn't expect to run away, and then one of those employees is like, oh, we got a runner, and then you just see some guy with a sniper rifle on top of the store, just aiming on the guy's head, no.
Okay, well, there's laws for that, dude. There's a difference between
Well, what about
and
well, explain that to riots. Explain that to riots in LA. In the
Realistic.
Oh, okay, let me explain. LA riots. In the LA riots, there was a term.
The rooftop.
Yes, the Korean rooftop where they had weapons, literally aiming at people because they knew if there were going to be people looting.
Isn't that the same thing with the 17-year-old dude with an AR?
The Kyle Rittenhouse?
Yeah, that guy.
Well, that one's just a whole another can of worms. One can argue
in that case, I feel like they didn't know.
Technically, he was committing.
It's like the military, where the U.S. military doesn't shoot first.
Technically, he was doing an illegal activity by transferring a gun into a state that he wasn't able to carry. I mean, in that state, I researched, it was open carry. However, the police.
He's not 18,
Yeah, he wasn't
He
18.
can't actually have it.
Yes, but then also, I don't know if I could be wrong about this because I don't know about the whole laws about transferring guns to one state to another. But now that just brings up the question, in my opinion, what if it was a different person who was in his 20s and he managed to do the same exact thing? Where would you go from there then?
I think that's a really interesting question. All right, that was a really pensive argument. We definitely had a good discussion. I hope everyone enjoyed. It was fun, and
Please like and subscribe.
Yep, and thank you for watching.